One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God," he said, "since you're under the same sentence." Right? You laying here, you up here getting hung on the cross, you get ready to die too. Don't you fear God? Verse 41. This criminal says, "We are punished justly. For what we are getting, our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." I'm reading from the NIV. Jesus answered him, "I tell you the truth. Today you will be with me in paradise." Get the picture? Two criminals are hanging on crosses next to Jesus. One on his right side, one on his left. Right? Two criminals arguing with each other. One of them admitting his sins, that we getting what we deserve. My question is, how do you determine value? How do you determine what something's worth? Kingdom economics. We have the Keynesian system, the supply side economic system. I heard a couple of economists talking the other day about a few minutes on the radio, and one of them said, if we put the money in the hands of the working class and the lower class people, they will buy more stuff, which will stimulate the economy, and then, then we'll have more jobs and do that. And I didn't hear the other argument, But the other argument is, the other argument was, if we give it to the rich people, we give it to the banks, right? Then they will lend money out for people to build factories and get jobs. But they said a lot of times that money don't go anywhere. They just sit on it and invest it in the stock market and make more money on it. So, but how do you determine what something's worth? If I hold up my iPhone, you say, that's worth about, let me see, you had it about a year now, the new one's coming out. You bought it for, I don't remember what I paid for it, 1,100, 1,000, I really don't remember. Because Pastor Beth bought it. But I bought hers, so we switched yeah. But she got the bigger one, I'll tell you. I hope she ain't watching. Right? So they say, it costs 1,100 now. Well, the new one's coming out. It would be worth 800, but the new one's coming out. We'll give you 500 for it. And they determine value. So kingdom economics is kind of how you determine a value system. You look at a car. Oh, that's nice. That's new. Drive it off the lot. Okay, it depreciated 20%. Huh? Brand new car, that's $20,000. Drive it off, they drive it back the next day. I can only give you 15 for it. Why? Huh? How do you determine value? It's crazy. So this always reminds me, like I said, I used to read to the kids, and they used to try to catch me reading, and if they caught me reading, then they could stay up a little longer, another half hour while I read them a story. So, but this book, I'm going to read chapter 4. And I'm going to start here. The only thing more outlandish than the request was that it was granted. Just trying to picture the scene is enough to short circuit the most fanciful of imaginations. A flat-nosed ex-con asking God's Son for eternal life. But try to imagine the appeal being honored. Well, that steps beyond the realm of reality and enters into absurdity. But as absurd as it may appear, that's exactly what happened. He who deserved hell got heaven. And we're left with a puzzling riddle. What for goodness sake, was Jesus trying to teach us? Was he trying to prove that by pardoning this strong arm, who in all probability had never said grace, must probably nevertheless have done anything with it? But I got a theory for you. But I've got to tell you a tale that you may not believe. It seems a couple of prowlers broke into a department store in a large city. They successfully entered the store and stayed long enough to do what they came to do, and escaped unnoticed. What is unusual about this story is what these fellows did. They took nothing, absolutely nothing. No merchandise was stolen, no items were removed, but what they did was ridiculous. Instead of stealing anything, they changed the cost of everything. Price tags were swapped, values were exchanged. These clever pranksters took the tag off a $395 camera and stuck it on a $5 box of stationery. The $5.95 sticker on a paperback book was removed and placed on an outboard motor. They repriced everything in the store. Crazy? You bet. But the craziest part of this story took place the next morning. You're not going to believe this. This store opened as usual. Employees went to work. Customers began to shop. The place functioned as normal for about 4 hours before anyone noticed what had happened. 4 hours. Some people got some great bargains. Others got fleeced. For 4 solid hours, no one noticed that the prices were switched and the values had been swapped. Hard to believe? It shouldn't be. We see the same thing happening every day. We're deluged by a crippled value system. We see the most valuable things in our lives peddled for pennies, and we see the cheapest smut go for millions. The examples are abundant and besetting. Here's a few encounters I've run into in the last week. The salesman who defended his illegal practices by saying, "Let's not confuse business with ethics." The military men who sold top secret information to an enemy country, sold their integrity too, for $6,000. The cabinet member of a large nation who was caught illegally dealing in semi-precious stones. His cabinet position, Minister of Justice. The father who confessed to the murder of his 12-year-old daughter. The reason he killed her? Because she wouldn't go to bed with him. Why do we do what we do? Why do we take blatantly black and white and paint it gray? Priceless morals trashed, while senseless standards are obeyed. What causes us to elevate the body and degrade the soul? What causes us to pamper the skin while we pollute the heart? Our values are messed up. Somebody broke into the store and exchanged all the price tags. Thrills are going for top dollar, and the value of human beings is going for an all-time low. You don't have to be a philosopher to determine what caused such a sag in the market. It all began when someone convinced us that the human race is headed nowhere, that man has no destiny, that we're in a cycle. There's no reason or rhyme to this absurd existence on this planet. Somewhere we got the idea that we're meaninglessly trapped on this mud heap we call Earth. It's just a spinning mausoleum going around the sun with no purpose. That creation was accidental, and that humanity has no direction. Pretty gloomy, huh? The second verse is even worse. If man has no destiny, then he has no duty. He has no obligation, no responsibility. If he has no destiny, then he has no guidelines or goals. And if he has no destiny, then who's to say what's right or what's wrong? Who is to say that a husband just can't leave his wife and family? Who is to say you can't abort a fetus? What's wrong with shacking up? Who says I can step on somebody's neck to get to where I want to go? It's our value system. Your value system against mine. Mine against yours. No absolutes, no principles, no ethics, no standards. Life is reduced to weekends, paychecks, and quick thrills. The bottom line is disaster. If man has no duty or destiny, then the next logical step is that man has no value. And if man has no future, he isn't worth much. He is worth, in fact, about as much as a tree or a rock. No difference. There's no reason to be here, therefore, there is no value. And you've seen the results of this. Our system goes haywire. We feel useless and worthless. We freak out. We play games. We create false value systems. We say that you are valuable if you're pretty. We say that you're valuable if you can produce something. We say that you're valuable if you can slam dunk a basketball or snag a pop fly. You're valuable if your name has a doctor in front of it or a PhD behind it. You're valuable if you have a 6-figure salary and drive a foreign car. You're valuable. Value is now measured by 2 criteria: appearance and performance. It's a pretty tough system, isn't it? Where does that leave those who are mentally challenged, or those who are not as pretty, or those who are uneducated? Where does that place the aged or the handicapped? What hope does that offer the unborn child? Not much. Not much at all. We've become nameless numbers on mislaid lists. Now, please understand, this is man's value system, not God's. His plan is much brighter. God, with eyes twinkling, steps up to the philosopher's blackboard, erases that never-ending, always repeating cycle of history, and replaces it with a line. A hope-filled, promise-filled, slender line. And looking over his shoulder to see if the class is watching, he draws an arrow on the end. In God's book, man is heading somewhere. He has an amazing destiny. We're being prepared to walk down the church aisle and become the bride of Christ. We're going to live with him, share the throne with him, reign with him. We count. Tell your neighbor, you count. We are valuable. And what's more, our worth is built in. Our value is inborn. You see, if there's anything that Jesus wanted everyone to understand, it was this: that a person is worth something merely because he's a person. That's why he treated people like he did. Think about it. The girl caught making out, He forgave her. You remember? And we caught this woman in the very act of adultery, and all the people was there, and Jesus said, he was writing in the dirt, said, he without sin cast the first stone, because he was supposed to be stoned. And they like started dropping their rocks. Started walking off. Huh? He said she has value. He forgave her. How about the untouchable leper? Anytime a leper entered into a city or a building, you couldn't hardly enter a building. You had to say unclean. Everybody had to stay, 20 feet away from him? It was more than this COVID thing. What's the COVID, 6 feet? You had to stay 20 or 30 feet away from him. They had to let you know it's unclean. People that were throwaways. Jesus touched him. And the blind guy, the welfare case was just kind of cluttering the roadside. Jesus honored him. Oh man, and that worn out windbag who was addicted to self-pity, cripple, self-pity. Oh, every time the water roils up and I gotta throw myself in, somebody beats me to it. The man at the pool of Bethesda, right? When the water rolled up and started rumbling and roiling, and then if you jumped in there real quick, you got healed. And Jesus said, man, what you doing here? Every time, man, been there for about 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. Huh? He been there a long time, and said every time the water roils, I get up to try to get out there, and somebody beats me to it. And then the water stops, and I got to go back and sit up there and wait on it again. And the water wouldn't roil every minute, you know. It was like, you know, some days it would, some days it wouldn't. Full of self-pity. Couldn't walk, crippled. Jesus found value in him. He healed him. And don't forget the classic case study I just read about. The tale of the crucified crook, the thief who was there hanging. Now, if anyone was ever worthless, this one was. If any man ever deserved dying, this man probably did. And if any fellow was a loser, probably had a big L written on his forehead. That's probably why Jesus chose him to show us what he thinks of the human race. Maybe this criminal had heard the Messiah speak. Maybe he had seen him love the lowly. Maybe he had watched him dine with the punks and the pickpockets and the tax collectors who was cheating and the potty mouths in the streets. Or maybe not. Maybe the only thing he knew about the Messiah was what he saw now. A beaten, slashed, nail-suspended preacher. His face red with blood, his bones peeking through torn flesh, his lungs gasping for air. Something, though, told him he had never been in better company. And somehow he realized that even though all he had was a prayer, he finally had met the one to whom he should pray. Any chance you could put in a good word for me? Kind of a loose translation. The criminal said, hang in there. Jesus said, consider it done. Huh? Wow. Huh? He said, I deserve what I'm getting. But you don't. Could you put a good word in for me? Consider it done. Now, why would Jesus do that? What in the world did he have to gain by promising this desperado a place of honor at the banquet table? What in the world could this chiseling, quizzling even offer in return? I mean, he get ready to die, right? The Samaritan woman, I can understand. Remember the Samaritan woman he met at the well, right? She could go back and tell everybody. But this dude, he get ready to die. Huh? And Zacchaeus, he had some money, right? He could go back and repay everybody he cheated, and he said he was going to double it, right? But this guy hanging on the cross next to Jesus, what could he give? What's he going to do? Nothing. That's the point. That's the point. Listen closely. Jesus' love does not depend on what we can do for him. Not at all. In the eyes of the king, you have value simply because you are. Not because you drive a certain vehicle, or you wear a certain kind of clothes, or you live in a certain neighborhood, but because you are. That's enough. Period. Remember that. Remember that next time you left holding the bag and somebody ran out on you, or somebody cheated you out of some money. Remember that. Or somebody dogged you out saying you ain't worth nothing. Just remember that to Jesus, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, you have value just because you are. I do. I smile because I know I don't deserve love like that. None of us do, really. When you get right down to it, none of us deserve it. And any contribution that we make is outright puny. Well, I preached the gospel for 50 years, and he'd be looking at you like, so? What do people say? So? For God so loved the whole world. So what we can do is little, it ain't all that. All of us, even the most pure of us, probably deserve heaven as much as that crook did. All of us are signing on Jesus' credit card, not ours. And it also makes me smile to think that there is a grinning ex-con walking on streets paved with gold who knows more about grace than 1,000 theologians. No one else would have given him a prayer. But in the end, that was all that he had. And in the end, that's all it took. No wonder they call him Savior. How valuable are you to God? When you walk down the street on the sidewalk, right? What you walking on? Dirt, mud, mixed up and dry, just a little cement. When you walk in heaven, you walking on streets paved with gold. If the streets are paved with gold and you walking on them, he's got gold streets for you to walk on. How much more are you worth than streets of gold, highways of gold, whole streets of gold? I'm not talking about a little sidewalk between here and Mo's house. I'm talking about a street. I'm talking about I-94. I'm talking about I-75, streets paved with gold. How valuable are you? What determines the value of a thing? What determins the value of this iPad, which is, I don't know, about 4 years old? So, Pastor Dave, you had to pay about $900 for it 4 years ago. What's the value of it now? Got a lot of good sermons on it. What would you pay for this? Elder Robinson, what would you pay for this? About $500. What would you pay for it, Melody? 1,000? Huh? What would you pay for this, Julie? My iPad. You wouldn't buy it? No? Okay, what would you pay for it, Mose? All right. Kathy, give me a number. What would you pay for it? 400? 200? Do I hear 200? Do I hear 100? 50 cents. $50. All right. I better sell it before the price goes up. Isn't that something? But in the economic system, the value of a thing is determined by what someone will pay for it. If someone will pay $1,000 for this, yeah, right, sold. Yeah. And the way I figured it out, I put it all on the cloud. So you may think you're getting the service, but I buy a new one, it just comes back to the new one on the cloud, right? Yeah. The price of a thing is determined by what someone will pay for it. So someone take my car, my wife's car, and they say, oh, that's cute. I got something in the mail that said, oh, you kept it up and done all the maintenance. It's worth $15,000, $16,000. Really? Wow. Maybe. But if I went down on the street, somebody said, I may give you $6,000 for it. You know? But the value of something is determined by what somebody will pay for it. The value of Renee, your value is determined by what somebody paid for you. Melvin, your value is determined by what somebody paid for you. Ione, your value is determined by what somebody paid for you. Sarah, your value is determined by what somebody paid for you. And Jesus paid by paying for you with his life. With his blood. So don't let nobody tell you you ain't worth that. If you get a job and they say you worth $8 an hour, I beg your pardon. Even if you take the job, that ain't what you worth. I'm gonna take this job, because I know y'all need some help, but I'm worth way more than that. Because Jesus paid, he gave his life for me, so I must be worth something. He got mansions for me, he got streets of gold that I'm walking on, and you trying to pay me $8 an hour or $15 an hour, I don't care if it's $20 an hour, I'm worth more than that. And so in the kingdom, the economic system is determined by the king. The value system is determined by the king. What he would pay for you. You're valuable. You're precious in his sight. He said in Jeremiah, I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you hope in the future. In other words, you have a destiny. I am paying for you with my blood. And your destiny is one day you will walk down the aisle and become the bride of Christ. If this word is good for you, just give the Lord a clap offering, because I'm going to call it done. Sometimes we don't feel like that. Sometimes somebody has left us or dogged us or done something to us. But I want you to know, heaven wants you to know how valuable you are. How valuable you are to the King. And does it matter to anybody else how valuable you are? No. I get my worth from my relationship with the King. If anybody's been struggling with that, just come on down for prayer and we'll pray with you for you to get that revelation. Or you can turn it off now. To get that revelation.